Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the NASEO Financing Committee call. I'm Sam Kramer, Senior Program Director here in charge of our financing programs. Excited to have you here for a really good discussion, thinking about the NCIF as part of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and all the opportunities that energy offices have to coordinate and collaborate with this. I will turn things over to our Finance Committee Chair, Eddie Trevino, who's going to help kick things off for us and get things going.
Hello, everybody. This is Eddie Trevino. I'm the Director of the State Energy Conservation Office in Texas. I'm also the Financing Committee Co-Chair. And all of you that are familiar with this Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund program, you know there are three competitions. We're going to be focusing today on the National Clean Energy Investment Fund. There was also the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator and the Solar for All competition. And so I give a plug for Texas because the Texas was part of two teams, multi-state teams for the Solar for All, and also was awarded a statewide grant with a coalition of Texas municipalities. So we're excited. We're excited for the Solar for All. But today we have, as part of our discussion, two panelists, two awardees, and I'm happy to introduce to you. First is going to be Eli Hobson. He's Chief Administration and Development Officer at the Coalition for Green Capital. And then our second speaker is going to be Tom Mercer. He's Vice President of Product at Rewire in America. So what I'll do first is, Eli, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. After both speakers complete their presentations, we're going to a Q&A. So please enter any questions you have into the chat box, and we'll take those after both of them complete their presentations. So Eli, you get to go first. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Eddie. And thank you all. Thanks to the NASEO team for having us. Really excited to be chatting with you. You all represent just a huge opportunity to advance the work that we've been doing. And so looking forward to partnering with each of you. The Coalition for Green Capital is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3. We have been advocating and helping to support state, local, and national green banks for over 10 years. And there's now across the country, 20 plus operating state and local green banks, as well as another 20 plus emerging green banks. They don't all go by the name Green Bank. The Texas Clean Energy Fund is an example that Eddie mentioned, or other varieties on the name, but any sustainable finance-focused institution, we consider a green bank. And the goal of helping to set up these organizations, both at the national and at the state and local level, is to really provide, a permanent, sustainable source of capital to help move the needle on these kinds of sustainable investments that are new to some geographic areas or are new to certain communities, and really haven't been out there long enough to build the kind of track record that a commercial finance institution would be comfortable taking all of the risks on their own. And so we partner with private capital providers, with other local community lenders, as a green bank, to take some of those risks that your local commercial bank may not be ready to take on, but we want to help them learn about these new types of products, learn about ways that they can build successful business models, and then hand it over. The role of the green bank is not to be the permanent financing solution. It's really to demonstrate new opportunities for commercial banks, to bring in private capital to demonstrate that, help them learn about it, help them get up to speed, and then hand it over to the private capital markets. So we are incredibly honored to have been selected by EPA for a $5 billion award under the National Clean Investment Fund. We were also selected for Solar for All for North and South Dakota. And many of our members are representing or part of the Solar for All consortiums in winning states for many of you on this call. So we see these programs as ideal for supporting each other. There's a huge pool of capital on Solar for All. We want to be in position to help those recipients when they have placed loans, when they're looking to recycle that capital. We want to be at the national level, purchasing those loans, delivering new capital back into those local markets, and also helping provide, standardized documentation, standardized reporting, making sure that we are coordinating across the NCIF recipients, but also across the CCIA recipients and across the other Solar for All recipients. So overall here, we're really looking to try and work to make a successful private capital market ecosystem in sustainable finance. And the goal, when you look at the quantity of investment that's needed across the country, far exceeds the total 27 billion from GGRF. So we can't reach our goals without private capital. It's baked into the statute as a part of the requirement and one of the key targets. And to give you a sense of what we are looking to try and do from a private capital mobilization perspective, from our revised number in terms of what we were awarded, we're looking to mobilize initially at the project level 3 to 4 times private capital for every dollar that we put in. And so by the end of the second year, our target is to have from our 5 billion, in total to mobilize 16.5 billion in private capital. So that obviously puts in a lot more projects on the ground, creates a lot more jobs. And then by the end of year 7, we're looking to have somewhere between 40 to 60 billion in private capital mobilized. We get there from that initial project leverage that I was talking about. So, $1 from a green bank, $3 from a private capital institution, 2 to 3, depending on the project. And then over time, starting in year 3, we will start purchasing those loans from across the country, not just from our own network and our own direct investments, but also from some of the others that have been made, variety of sources, whether it's pure private capital, whether it's supported by other programs. And so those areas are ones that we wanted to make sure we flagged for you all, particularly as you have existing lending programs set up, or as you're starting to think about lending programs with some of this federal capital that's coming both from EPA, DOE, USDA, and others. We want to make sure that we're working together with you so that those loans are ones that are capable of being, rolled into portfolios and recycled, because that recycling mechanism is really what starts to generate the significant scale and the significant investment that we hope to hit. In terms of thinking about benefits, cost savings from the projects that we're envisioning in our pipeline, it's roughly 5 billion in 3 years. And so we'd be able to return to the public through cost savings to consumers and cost savings to businesses. If our projections, if we can follow and meet those, the full cost of our grant within 3 years, which we're very excited about. And in terms of jobs, it's about 340,000 in 3 years. And then by 2035, we're looking at 1.5 million jobs. And that cost savings number obviously goes up over time as well. In terms of where we are looking to make our investments, so areas that would be, kind of in our sweet spot of partnering with you all, the EPA identified 3 priority categories: distributed energy generation and storage, net zero emissions buildings, and net zero emissions in transportation. We are focused on distributed energy generation and storage and zero emissions transportation. We are going to be doing a little bit of net zero emissions for buildings, but as you'll hear from my colleagues over at Rewiring, the other recipients are more focused on net zero emissions in buildings. And so we are refining our focus to be more on the other areas. We are also heavily focused on some of the non-EPA identified priority project categories. So the other category, but we think that there's several potential transformational investments in things like grid support, interconnection for new projects, potentially transmission support in some cases. And so from a impact perspective, we really see those as being both opportunities to move capital at scale, as well as capital that is really unlocking a large amount of potential investment, up and down the line. So allowing other large scale renewable projects to come online by making that investment in the transmission system, for example. So if there's particular projects in your states or that are coming through your states that you're interested in partnering with us on or helping us think through, we'd be happy and excited to work with you on that. And I don't know if we have any of the offshore wind states, but we do think there's some challenges in the offshore wind financing market right now that may be appropriate for GGRF funds. typically we're not looking to displace private commercial capital. And so just your generic vanilla solar project or your generic vanilla wind project is going to be able to find financing from the private capital markets. And so that would not be a role for us. But given some of the challenges and the more early stage status of offshore wind, there may be some offshore wind support pieces that we could do as well. In terms of the types of products, we're very flexible. Typically, we'd be doing junior debt or senior debt, but we can also do loan loss reserves and credit enhancements. We will have, we expect some insurance products through a affiliate that's going to be doing some nonprofit insurance to try and solve some of the challenges that private capital is having in these sustainable projects at a more capital efficient ratio. So that's something that may be of interest to some of your project developers or some of your programs. The last thing I wanted to just give you all a sense of is how we kind of think about our investment strategy. We're really focused on investing at speed and scale. Our project pipeline at application was 29 billion. It's in the process of being refreshed. Now that we're much closer to actual deployment, the EPA is telling us that we will have contracts signed by July 1. And so looking to start moving capital into projects as quickly as possible after that. But we think speed is a really important component, both from a climate impact perspective, but also from a financial perspective. The sooner we can put those dollars to work, the sooner they can start earning and we can reinvest in more qualified projects. And then our final piece is what I already mentioned, is the capital recycling. We want to be able to get a large volume of loans placed that are capable of being recycled so we can start really accessing those private capital debt markets as quickly as we can. So that really helps to create the self-sustaining ecosystem. That's our goal and what we're trying to do here. So I will pause there and pass it over.
All right. Thank you, Eli. Tom, it's your turn.
Wonderful. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I have a couple slides here to share as well. Again, wanted to echo, thank you so much for having us here at Rewiring America. I'm Tom, there we go. I'm Tom Mercer. I'm the VP of Product at Rewiring America, responsible for the digital products and platforms that we're building here. And I'm also joined by Kristen Eberhard, who is our Senior Director of Policy. And we're just really excited to talk about ways that we can collaborate together at the state and community level to make the most of the investment in NCIF. First of all, I'll share a little bit more about Rewiring America. Our North Star is basically to make efficient electric machines the most affordable and accessible to install for everyone. And in part, this is why we're so excited about this generational opportunity to really catalyze financing for this. We as an organization are a very interdisciplinary organization. So we're thinking about big picture structural changes that we can make to make electrification more affordable. We're also thinking we have marketing and product teams that are building consumer-facing tools like our incentive calculator and personal electrification planner to help households take consumer action. And then we're also working at the community level across the country to support local electrification efforts and to really understand the barriers and challenges to help overcome them. And we think that this problem requires a multidisciplinary approach, and it's serious work, but we try not to take ourselves too seriously. We were honored to join a coalition of partners in applying for the National Community Investment Fund, and we learned of our $2 billion award in April, working with Enterprise, LISC, United Way, and Habitat for Humanity. Just to share a little bit more about our application, it was, as Eli mentioned, housing focused. We cover both multifamily and single family. So LISC and Enterprise are really focused on multifamily buildings, multifamily housing, and Rewiring and Habitat are more focused on single family. United Way is very focused on community engagement in our application. And our goal is really, and commitment to the EPA is to have more than 75% of the financial assistance going to low-income and disadvantaged communities, which is almost 2 times the EPA mandate in the grant. As you'll see in a minute, we're thinking about this as more than just financing. This is about catalyzing market transformation and making the economics accessible to everyone. And we've already gotten commitments as a part of the application process from 150 communities and more than 150 transaction partners, but we're thinking a lot about how we can build a coalition around the work. We really start from this, just starting at the household level and thinking about the math. So if you think about a home outside of Pittsburgh that is lower income, maybe they're 60% of area median income, they have fuel, oil, heat, and they could project to save about $50 a month by replacing that with a heat pump. It might cost them $15,000. So thinking about the math for that particular household of, okay, there's this $15,000 bill. If they can take advantage of the HERE rebates, that would be fantastic. And that could be up to $8,000 off the top. They might get a small utility incentive. But even after that, you're still probably looking at a pretty significant gap between what a home like that could afford. Maybe a $30 a month monthly payment, so they can reap some of the savings of the energy savings that they'll get from the install, and still afford the financing. And that leaves this gap, this almost $4,000 gap that is something that we've been kind of obsessed with. And what we're thinking about is ways to close that gap. So if for that household, instead, we could basically say, hey, you can take those incentives and rebates off the top, but in addition to that, we're going to work to with OEMs, manufacturers, and the supply chain to try to transform the economics to reduce the overall cost of the install. And by the way, in addition to that, we're going to try to find ways to monetize the carbon that's saved and get a credit there. And by the way, that means that if you're a low-income household, you actually don't need to have this project financed at all, because ideally it's probably best not for you to add additional debt to your sort of household concerns. Or maybe for a moderate income household, you have the same math. They qualify for less in the way of rebates and maybe tax credits in this case. You could still do that negotiation, but in that case, maybe there's not a need to tap into the energy attribution credits in this particular certifications in this particular case, because that home actually can take out that loan of $6,000, roughly $6,000, and make that loan payment. And so what we're thinking about is, what is the program that we need to design that helps us tailor this particular offer for particular households across the country as a part of the single family specific work that we're doing at Rewiring America. And what we're thinking about is basically, how do we create a seamless, delightful household experience and radically improved install economics by engaging established community organizations to improve household reach, using trained community navigators to generate and aggregate well-scoped jobs, so to help homeowners to sort of pre-qualify them for the program, to work to negotiate install economics for standard packages, starting with heat pumps, integrate those energy attribution certificates, which I talked about earlier, to sort of capture the carbon that would be saved over the lifetime of the install, layer on support and aftercare that would lead to successful jobs and neighbor referrals. And then also think about, obviously, importantly, this fits into a broader ecosystem. So how can we leverage existing programs and partners to get this done in any particular community, where every single community will have a different type of sort of context and resources available to it. And so how we're thinking about this at a program level is, we need the financing, we need those negotiated economics for the install, and we need that carbon fund in terms of the financial products that we would need to bring to the table. We also need a set of digital tools that we can roll out that would allow us to target the right households where the economics are going to be the best, that give them and community navigators who would serve them the tools to enroll and qualify their homes, and then a way to build the offer and stitch it together from those different financial streams that I talked about. And then finally, there's a whole set of services that are needed around trained community navigators, a contractor network, either existing contractor networks that exist out there as a part of state programs, obviously, or to the extent that additional capacity is needed in particular communities, figuring out ways to build that at the community level, and then thinking about install quality control and aftercare. And so the goal for us is to launch a handful of communities this year as a way to test and pilot our concept here. And then with the idea that it's a modular, as I mentioned, the situation on the ground in every community is going to be different. So we want to see, okay, well, where is there an existing contractor network? Where is there a state program or a utility program that we can partner with to utilize resources that already exist, but bring capabilities that we can uniquely provide. And then we want to build that as a platform that allows others to take advantage of some of these individual services. For example, those energy attribution certificates, the enrollment tools, the navigator model that we're developing, with the idea that we could support a more interoperable ecosystem of tools and programs, which is really, I think, what we all need to work towards. So for this group, I'm really interested in the discussion to come, and I see that there's already sort of questions popping up, but in particular, we're thinking about, could you, as state energy offices, support us in allocating electrification and efficiency rebates to supported NCIF projects to make sure that we can integrate our offerings and make sure we're supporting households together, given that we're intending to bring a lot of we're bringing additional financing, but also additional support to those projects, really prioritizing community organizations and navigators to provide assistance and ensure equitable program reach for your programs and our programs. But it's a thing we're thinking a lot about. And then also just really eager for feedback from this group on, we've started outreach to to specific states to talk about, what are the biggest gaps that you have and where can we fill those gaps? Because I think we're thinking about this not, again, as a monolith that we come in and offer to every community, but instead, how do we help fill the gaps and stitch the offering together for the household to provide a seamless experience? So with that, I think we're going into the Q&A and discussion.
All right, thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. So the question for both of you all that popped up, that was a really good question, is which communities and what areas are you all planning to launch this first year?
We're still narrowing down our specific communities. I think we'll choose 3, and we're planning to launch in the fall, but we're actively discussing our targets right now. And a lot of it has to do with where do we have on the ground support, where we can kind of stitch together that picture, and then also where the economics going to be good for the heat pump installs that are likely to be the first project that we're focused on.
Same question for you, Eli.
So we'll be launching nationally. We have 18 sub-awardees. 16 of those are state and local green banks that have a particular region, and 2 of them are also national nonprofits. So without running through the 16 American states across the country through our partners locally, but we will also be acting nationally, and that includes tribal communities.
All right.
And I just wanted to add for Rebecca, who's asking the question, our staffer on the ground in New Mexico, Alex Ormond, is definitely keeping New Mexico communities on our radar for our consideration for rolling out.
And so the next question is for both of you. States are having a lot of fun with Davis-Bacon, Build America, Buy America, and NEPA. And I was wondering how you all were thinking about this issue and what steps you all are taking to work within those requirements.
So I'm happy to take that one first. For the scale of projects that we're looking at, many of our private sector partners are already necessarily complying with Davis-Bacon. And so it has been less of a challenge for us when we're thinking about some of those transmission projects and interconnection projects. On the BABA side, we are still waiting some clarification from EPA. I should have mentioned at the outset, but we're all in this negotiation process with EPA right now. And so there are many as yet unanswered questions. And they're going to be resolving these over not just this first round of contracts, but over the course of the fall. And so that's going to be an evolving question, and certainly something that we're keeping an eye on and paying attention to, and would also benefit from hearing your all's expertise actually having begun that.
And I can say for us, we had always planned to pay fair and living wages. So just the straight up wage aspect of the Davis-Bacon has not changed our plans much. But the complexity of compliance does mean that on the residential sector, some of the smaller contractors, it could be a barrier to entry for them. And so we are trying to scope that out and looking at some of the larger contractors or unions who are already set up to comply with Davis-Bacon because they already have public contracts, are places that we could go, but still working on figuring out how do we continue to grow the job market and bring in some of those contractors who might not already be set up for compliance with Davis-Bacon. And we would love to hear from states if you have experience on, how to navigate that or how you help bring in additional contractors. We would definitely love to hear from you and partner with you.
Another question for both of y'all are, in the rebate programs, we have to create a network of approved contractors, and those contractors that aren't approved aren't going to be able to participate as part of the rebate program. Do you all have the same type of system set up for the work that y'all are working on? Who wants to go first?
We can go. Yes, we will. I mean, our goal, I think, would be to leverage existing sort of approved contractor networks to the extent possible, because the whole idea here is to braid and stack incentives. And so if we're not leveraging those existing networks, it's going to make it well nigh impossible to do that. So I think that's the goal. I think it might have to be a subset of those networks to the extent that we're, going in and trying to like standardize jobs and create a sort of a way of scoping and specing jobs that make it easier for those contractors to do a higher volume and group business, but then also allow us to keep costs low for the homeowner and also pay those fair wages. So I think there's probably we might have to choose a subset of those networks to start.
And we are, I want to echo Tom's point about we don't want to recreate the wheel, especially where we have a local member who's already created that contractor network. I think one of the challenges that we're all facing and would love to be able to work with you all on is, that there are a variety of different networks out there. And, right now there's somewhat of a, understandably a patchwork from state to state. And so thinking about how can we as the national partners build that, single system where, we're not coming into a state and trying to recreate something that, frankly, you can't do from a national level. Like you really need folks on the ground who are building those relationships and doing the education. So we are very interested in, building off the work that you all have already done and the work that, others in the state and region have already done, and not trying to recreate a separate unique network.
One of the concerns that's been presented to states, our state included, is as the workforce develops and these contractors and new contractors enter into the marketplace and get certified, there's always a concern that they are not going to be paid in a timely fashion. And so I'm just kind of curious as to what, and obviously if it's a small contractor or any contractor doesn't want to hold on to capital financing for a single family or multifamily. So I was kind of wondering what steps in the process are included in your process to ensure that the contracting network gets reimbursed in a timely fashion.
I can answer to start. I think Kristen may have alluded to this also in the Q&A. A lot of our use of capital will be to just to pre-fund rebates. And this is where I think the opportunity to collaborate with state energy offices is so critical, because we would love to find a way to make sure that we can, as we're packaging together an offer for a household, to reserve the rebate that's available so that we can orchestrate the financial transaction. We can make the contractor whole up front, and then we can collect on the back end. And I think if we're doing our pre-qualification right, we should be almost certain that that those projects will qualify. But I think that's where we'd love to have more conversations with y'all about how we can do that most effectively, because I think that is going to be a huge risk, is making sure that the contractors are not left holding the bag.
I don't have anything to add. That was great. Thanks.
All right. So when we finish this this session, what are two or three takeaways that y'all have that the states need to remember about today's meeting? What do you want them to remember and take away?
I'm happy to kick that one off. So we would love for you to remember that there is this, while there is this huge body of dollars coming out in the short term, that with your help and our coordination, that we can really unlock significant multiples of private capital and help make these permanent economies, jobs, ecosystems. And so really thinking through, how do we best use this opportunity to make sure that we are, working together to create the permanent economy that we all want to be supportive of. I think that's from a big picture perspective, that's really where we're focused. And then sort of short-term, simpler pieces are, if there are projects that you all are excited about that you're having trouble accessing private capital for, we'd love to chat through it. It may not be something that we're able to do, but we love to dive into the details and see if there's particular slice of the risk that we can help address and structure around. So happy to be a thought partner with you all going forward.
To mention one thing that's a little down in the weeds that we haven't said yet, but I want to take this opportunity to say it, which is for us to be able to work with you, it would be very helpful if you have a reservation system for the rebates. So PNNL's free workflow incorporates the ability to add a reservation system, but just for us, as we're lining these projects up, we might be lining them up over a period of time and then executing them. And we just want to make sure that we've, got those low income rebates lined up. So just a plug for PNNL's workflow tool.
And you bring up a good point, because not that many states have formally applied for submitted their applications for the rebate programs. So any input that you can provide as states select their administrators and as they develop all of their implementation plans and all of the other requirement plans for their application, I'm sure states would love you to send those suggestions so that they could possibly include them as part of, the criteria when they do select administrators, to make sure that you don't get left out. Okay, so here's a question for you, Eli. It says, what would include loans for workforce training and or supporting wraparound services in terms of market development?
So we do have from the market development and pre-development buckets, we do have a little bit more flexibility there from the terms of the grant. We can do actual grant work in supporting market development. We have a limited budget for that, so we're not going to be able to do everything that needs to be done, but we do have some dollars there. We'll be launching a national RFP for that work later this year. On the workforce development piece specifically, we do have a partner who is focused on developing a national revolving loan fund to support workforce training. And that's in the early stages of discussion with them. They just launched a similar program in Massachusetts. So Social Finance, that's the nonprofit that's been thinking about how to do this. Started out doing it more in the tech industry where they'd help you get your certificate in Microsoft or Google, etc. And the worker would be able to pay back only when they were in a job and earning on that certificate. And so thinking about that model for energy related workforce development, electrician training, those types of things is something that we'll be doing. We also are committed to supporting apprenticeship programs and building on some of the large national union bases where there are apprenticeship programs, particularly with the solar tax credit benefits from participating in those programs. And so we'll be looking to support and make sure that those programs are being marketed and that there's access to support those for the tax credits.
So Tom, how long do you think it'll take to get the community navigators in place once your award is executed?
Yeah, so we're going to go community by community on that. And I think for our first 3 communities that we launch this fall, we'll aim to have a program in place. We have some good foundations that have been laid here where we have a coaches training program that we've already started at Rewiring America. We've trained 700 coaches thus far and taken them through kind of a electrification 201 course that includes all the way up to some, building performance essentials as a way to help them coach their friends and neighbors through the process of electrifying their homes. And so it'll need to be different. It'll be a different kind of training, but we have some reps doing that. So the idea is to have them on the ground on day 1 as we're rolling out our first communities and then figuring out how we will replicate the model in the additional communities that we go to over the coming years.
Eli, do you have a similar approach?
We are, because we are not focusing on community by community support in the same way, we're really much more providing national market support. And then as the market building and pre-development grants that I mentioned are going to roll out to a few communities that are selected, but we also really want to make sure that we're providing access to finance as broadly as we can. So between the support that we're providing on the NCIF, but I think also piggybacking on the solar for all programs that are across the country, or we haven't talked much today about the third program, but the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator. Those recipients have some more ability to do technical assistance. They're going to be supporting smaller grants to local community lenders. And so we're really relying more on some of those other programs to be doing much of the market building and pre-development work.
Got it. So Tom, can you talk more about monetizing the carbon benefit and the carbon and community fund, how that would work in practice?
Yeah, so the way this will work in practice is we will go and we will collect a bunch of information about the household. We'll be able to build a model, a savings model from that. And from that, we can project what the emission savings would be from that install. And then the idea is for us to raise a fund from corporate and philanthropic organizations to basically be able to fund projects that would not otherwise have happened without that, which I think you sort of saw as we've looked at the household waterfall, really focused on lower income households where it's really hard to finance, and so where we need to get the cost down as much as possible. The idea is that this would be this would just show up like an instant rebate on the project, and we would just and then we would obviously, as we're going to do with the rest of our projects, we would be doing the M&V. We would be collecting utility bill data to verify, you know, what the savings are after the fact and so forth. But it would effectively look like a discount on the install, and we would fund it that way.
So it's not going to show up as a grant to the customer, right?
It wouldn't. I mean, we have talked about if there's a net positive, if we actually flip it all the way down to a negative amount, what we would do. But that will be a great problem to have. If we have it, maybe we'll write a check. But we just closing that financing gap for a lot of customers is really our focus right now.
So Eli, do you see any issues on your distributed energy and storage with interconnect issues delaying the projects?
That's obviously been a big challenge, and so something that we are focused on more in trying to alleviate, and also being you know, the patient capital in the room that can take some of that time risk. We are going to be acting and trying to create loans that are commercial in nature and can be recycled. But, you know, if the project, one of the issues is uncertainty about that timeline, that's a piece that, you know, with the right kind of diligence and comfort and understanding more about particular scenarios, that we think we can get comfortable with.
So are y'all thinking about leveraging mortgage financing to support decarbonization projects?
So we are not, that's not a target of ours, but I know it is for the other NCIF selectee who's not on the call. Climate United is very focused on that program. And then Tom, I don't know if you had.
We're looking at it as a possibility, but I would just underline the fact that, yeah, that Climate United is very focused on that. And we've looked at ways that we can leverage other green banks or other models for mortgage-based financing as a part of the package, but not, you know, not trying to like build anything new there ourselves.
So are you all aware of any funds that can be allocated to offer incentives like interest rate discounts or down payment assistance for home buyers that perform energy projects before or after a home transaction?
So there are limitations on the ability for us to be able to use NCIF grant funds for grant purposes. There can be flexibility. You know, buy down might be possible, or certainly offering below market capital, you know, is definitely possible. I think we would want to, you know, I would think better sources. I've almost turned that question back around to you all. You know, think about there's some mention of the HERO rebates programs or the other DOE programs that are out there, whether it's you know, USDA or otherwise. But this is also probably a rewriting question. I should let Tom answer this one first.
Yeah, I mean, we do have the same limitations, and I would say we've been more focused on retrofits right now, just because maybe in part because it's just harder, and retrofits of existing buildings and sort of not in sort of that buying moment. But it's a good reminder to be thinking about that use case as well. So.
So for both of you, what are the key first steps that the states, the energy offices at the states should be considering to coordinate their efforts to make sure that they align with what your organization is looking to accomplish?
I think familiarizing yourselves with what the qualified project requirements are, because that's a gating item for us to be able to contribute NCIF funds. And so EPA has 6 particular requirements that qualified projects have to meet. They have to be reducing greenhouse gas emissions, has to provide benefit to the community. It cannot be a brand new technology. It has to be commercially available. But making sure you understand and are comfortable and are sort of taking that into account in the program design is I'd say that's a critical piece just as you're starting out. And so as you're designing programs, ideally there would be maybe a lane for the qualified projects and a lane for non-qualified projects, so that we could be able to support the qualified projects without having to do a new deep dive into a portfolio and parse out which ones qualify and which ones don't. So that would be where I would start.
I would add, thinking about how your programs line up with the other incentives that are available in the state. So as we said, especially for these low-income households, we have to stack everything in order to get to zero. And so looking at your utility incentives, your WAP incentives, any other state or local programs, and what they are offering and sort of what their qualifying contract list is, their qualifying product list is, to try and get those aligned as much as possible so that it's easier, for us or for contractors to be able to say, okay, here's the project that works best for you, and know that that project is also going to qualify for the full stack of incentives.
One of the questions that we've wrestled with, especially when you're dealing with utility incentives as a primary thought, is we've got certain energy savings requirements for the rebate programs that we have to achieve in homes. And then there's utility incentives. And what would be the best way from your perspective to without double dipping, to make sure everybody gets properly credited for the savings that they're generating? Because that's a tough one for us for stacking. So I'm hoping you have the magic bullet.
Yeah, sorry. That's a tough one. Yeah, and making sure that each of those programs are stacking up, but then also getting the savings that you need to get to be accountable is it's tricky.
Yeah, we will be subject to fairly extensive reporting requirements and transparency requirements from the EPA. Those are still being developed and finalized, but there's a federal process to consider what we have to report on, how we have to report. But that's going to be at least one mechanism for any of the projects that we're involved in to make sure that that we are tracking both from an impact perspective of the project, but also what are the capital flows that are coming into the project. I don't know that they're going to get to the allocation of benefit question, which I agree is a really tricky one. But at the very least, it would be a baseline for impact from the project, capital that's flowing into the project, that will have to be reported on a regular basis.
All right. Thanks. Tom, are you planning to buy projects as a portfolio? And if so, what does an ideal portfolio mean to you? I'm not sure what the term buy projects means, so you can help. You can help me too.
Well, I think for us, buying projects probably means the customer acquisition cost, which means we are going to have to spend money on community navigators. We are going to work with United Way to build capacity in communities to support them. We're going to have to do outreach. So a lot of the the buying is really like doing the work in communities to get to those households and make the pitch for why they should have a heat pump and why it's going to work for them in their home and what they're going to save. So, but our portfolio to start, is going to be focused on heat pumps. Our goal is to move to other, qualified projects that, are established technologies that are going to that would qualify for financing. But we're going to be focused on heat pumps, weatherization, and electrical upgrades where they're required. And remediation obviously is going to be a piece of the portfolio. So that's those are the projects that we're thinking about to start, in part because the impact is the largest. That's where we can have the biggest bang for the buck in terms of emissions when we're reporting back to the EPA, although those are also some of the hardest projects to do at times because they require creating different incentives, bringing together multiple contractors. But again, that's like where we're trying to excel, is in trying to provide a guided experience in those kinds of projects where there's a lot of logistical overhead that would be very difficult for any household to take on, much less, a household that doesn't have, the time or money to really be focused on it.
All right, so we've got 5 minutes left. So Eli, you get to go first for your closing thoughts. Help us remember you forever from what your words in the next 2 minutes. And then Tom, you go next, and then Sam, I'll let you close.
Thank you, Eddie. No pressure. So for us, the closing thought here, and I started with this as well, is the opportunity to really make a sizable and lasting impact. And so we look to take this, both sizable and also tiny contribution when you think about the scale of the economy and the transition investments that are needed. But to take that $5 billion and really catalyze a transition across the country, including all communities, and over the next 5 or 6 years, to bring in hundreds of billions of dollars of private capital to come in alongside us and help catalyze that change. And in order to be successful to do that, we need your all's help and want to be working with you all to make that happen.
I could go and hand it to Kristen. My closing thought is collaboration. If you think about that like bar chart, each of those bars represents a different whole set of stakeholders that have to sort of buy into a sort of an approach to serve a particular household. And I feel like the reason I'm excited to be here with Kristen is because I feel like a key piece of that collaboration is collaboration with the state energy offices and the programs that y'all are running. But I think it goes beyond that. So this isn't going to work if we all can't line up and figure out how to serve the household together. That's like where I'm thinking.
And I'll just add, we're hoping to come in and help you all close the gap for some of those low income households. But we're also hoping that the sort of streamlining and platform that we're offering is going to help you reach, even more households even after your IRA rebates are done. So we're, hoping to get this chunk of low income households that you might not otherwise be able to convert now, and then also to have a big a market transformation over time.
Well, thank you all. That was really insightful. I appreciate you taking time to be with us. Sam, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks so much, Eddie. And thank you, everybody, for being here. A big round of thanks to our panelists for providing us a lot of good information on your plans here. This is very illuminating, and I think there's definitely some room for follow-up conversations here, since it sounds like I've had, from my notes here, at least 3 or 4 ways that we should really be kind of honing in on how to coordinate with you and both of you on your efforts for moving forward, with transmission, with rebates, with several different areas. So again, big thanks to everybody. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email them to me, and I'm happy to get you in touch with either of our panelists today. And other than that, have a great rest of your week, and also a happy Memorial Day. All right, take care, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.